Racist officer assaults. Black woman. Media explodes when her husband shows up in uniform. The flashing red and blue lights danced off the rain-slick pavement, casting a chaotic glow across Maple Street. Danielle Carter sat motionless in the driver's seat of her black Lexus, both hands flat on the steering wheel. Her knuckles were white from the pressure. "Step out of the vehicle," Officer Ryan Maddox barked for the third time, his voice sharp and clipped through the drizzle. He stood just behind her window, hand resting dangerously close to his holstered firearm. Danielle's voice was calm, deliberate. "I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a licensed driver, and this is my vehicle. My registration and license are—" "I said, step out now," Maddox growled. The tension in the air snapped. Before she could respond, Maddox yanked open the door and grabbed her by the arm. Danielle gasped in pain as he twisted her wrist and pulled her out into the cold night. "I need you to stop resisting," he snapped. "I'm not resisting," Danielle cried, wincing as her shoulder was shoved against the hood of her car. Across the street, curtains shifted in second-story windows. A dog barked. Rain pattered against asphalt and concrete. "You people think you can talk your way out of everything," Maddox muttered. Danielle's head turned sharply. "You people," she repeated. Maddox didn't answer. Instead, he pushed her harder against the hood and roughly patted her down. Her coat was soaked. Her cheek was scraped. But Danielle's eyes burned not with fear, but fury. He still had no idea who she was. Inside her coat, zipped inside a hidden inner pocket, her phone buzzed softly. Danielle caught her breath, gritted her teeth, and said through clenched lips, "This is the last mistake you'll make in uniform." Maddox laughed. "We'll see about that." He cuffed her roughly and dragged her to the back seat of his cruiser. As the door slammed shut behind her, a light rain turned to a heavy downpour. 2 hours earlier, Danielle had been at her mother's house in Stonecrest, sipping ginger tea and listening to old records on vinyl. Her mom had insisted she stay overnight. It was getting late, the weather was turning, and there had been bad energy on the news again. But Danielle had smiled, kissed her mother on the forehead, and said gently, "I'll be home by 10. Marcus is on base. I'll be fine." Now she sat in the back of a squad car, her coat soaked, cuffs digging into her wrists. Maddox was in the front seat, typing something into the computer. She could see him glancing into the rearview mirror, watching her, almost daring her to react. Danielle stared straight ahead, silent, calculating. He still hadn't run her plates, still hadn't verified her ID. He never gave her a chance. That was the game. From the front seat, Maddox muttered, "Got yourself a fancy car. Who'd you steal it from?" Danielle replied, cool and low, "My husband." "Want his name?" Maddox smirked. "I'm good." Danielle looked out the window. Streetlights flickered past like ghosts. She could hear her own heartbeat. When Maddox finally pulled into the station, he didn't bother going through the regular intake procedure. No Miranda rights, no formal booking. He walked her inside like a trophy, tossed her file onto the sergeant's desk, and left her in a holding room with peeling paint and a flickering light overhead. She sat in silence, the cold seeping into her bones. Time passed, her fingers were going numb. Then the door opened. It wasn't Maddox. It was a young officer, early 20s, Latino, nervous eyes. "Ma'am," he said, stepping inside carefully. "Do you need medical attention?" Danielle turned her head slowly. "What's your name?" "Ramirez, Officer Jesse Russell Ramirez." Her eyes narrowed. "Jesse, I need one phone call, and I need it now." He hesitated. "I'm not sure I'm allowed." "Then decide if you want to be the man who blocked a civil rights attorney from calling her husband, or the one who helped stop the story from getting worse." Ramirez blinked. "Civil rights attorney." Danielle didn't smile. "I'm not just some woman in a car, Jesse, please." He swallowed hard, then slipped a prepaid phone across the desk. 2 minutes. Danielle dialed. The line rang once. He picked up immediately. "Marcus," she whispered, "it happened. It's bad." There was silence, then a voice on the other end, calm and deep. "Are you safe?" "I'm at the station. Injuries are minor, but they know nothing. He didn't even ask for my name." Marcus Carter's tone changed. "I'll be there in 20. Say nothing more." As she hung up, Ramirez was staring at her. "Wait, Marcus Carter? As in Colonel Marcus Carter?" Danielle gave a slow nod. "Now you understand." Ramirez backed toward the door, eyes wide. I'm gonna make sure no one else comes in here." When the door closed, Danielle finally exhaled, then leaned back in her chair. This wasn't over. It hadn't even started. Exactly 17 minutes later, the front doors of the precinct burst open. Rain had eased, but the storm inside was just beginning. Colonel Marcus Carter strode in 6 feet 4 inches, chiseled features, and full military dress blues. His medals glinted under the fluorescent lights, soaked only slightly from the rain. His stare was unblinking, cold, exact. Officers turned their heads. One spilled coffee on the floor. "Where is she?" Marcus asked, voice booming with authority. The desk sergeant stammered. "Sir, I'm not sure who you—" "My wife, Danielle Carter, brought in an hour ago by Officer Maddox." "Where is she?" Maddox, who had just re-entered the lobby, froze mid-step. Color drained from his face. "You're her husband." Marcus stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "The woman you assaulted, the civil rights attorney you cuffed and shoved like a criminal." "Yes, that's my wife." Maddox's hand went to his belt, then stopped. The silence around them was thick. Reporters outside the window began pressing closer. Someone had leaked the footage. Cameras clicked. Microphones turned on. Marcus didn't flinch. "You didn't run her plates, didn't ask for ID, didn't follow protocol, and now the world is watching." The desk sergeant tried to intervene, but Marcus turned to him and calmly said, "Get her out, now." Ramirez came rushing in, unlocking the holding room and guiding Danielle forward. She stood tall despite her injuries, her poise unshaken. The crowd parted as Danielle and Marcus stood side by side in the lobby. Marcus leaned in and said softly, "Are you ready for them to know?" Danielle nodded once. "It's time." Then, as cameras clicked and reporters shouted, Danielle Carter stepped forward and raised her voice. "My name is Danielle Carter. I am a federally licensed civil rights attorney. Tonight, I was profiled, assaulted, and unlawfully detained by Officer Ryan Maddox." She turned to Maddox, whose mouth hung open. "And now you'll find out exactly what happens when the law fights back." Cameras flashed like lightning, and across the country, news outlets scrambled to break the headline. The reckoning had begun. Danielle sat on the edge of her hospital bed, her fingers tracing the bruises blossoming beneath her skin. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the room, but it did little to dull the throb in her shoulder. Still, her mind was sharper than ever. Marcus stood near the window, arms crossed, his uniform jacket draped over the back of a chair. He was quiet, watching the parking lot below fill with reporters and activists holding signs. They had come fast, too fast. The footage from the precinct had exploded across social media overnight. Her swollen face and scraped cheek had become a symbol. Again. Danielle broke the silence first. "How bad is it out there?" Marcus didn't answer right away. His jaw flexed. "They've already run your law license, your cases, your speeches. You're on every major network. It's not just local anymore, Danny. CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News, though they're calling it a misunderstanding." Danielle sighed. "Of course they are." He finally turned to her. His voice was softer now. You could have told them who you were the moment he pulled you over. She didn't flinch. And given him the excuse to treat me differently? That's the game, Marcus. That's how they hide the system, by making exceptions for the exceptional. You're not a martyr. I'm not trying to be. I needed to know if it was still this bad. He looked at her. And? It's worse. A knock came at the door. Marcus turned quickly, but Danielle lifted a hand to stop him. A tall black woman entered, her expression unreadable, a press badge hanging from her neck. Danielle Carter? Depends who's asking. I'm Janelle Booker, Channel 5 News. You probably know. I know who you are, Danielle said, eyes narrowing. You broke the LaSalle County corruption case. Janelle gave a nod. That was me, and I'm not here with a camera. Just curiosity, off the record for now. Marcus looked wary but said nothing. Janelle continued, People want the truth, not just the viral video. They want to understand how someone like you, someone with power, a name, could be treated like that. Danielle looked down at her wrists. The bruises from the handcuffs were turning a deep purple. She clenched her fists. Because the badge doesn't see names. It sees skin. Janelle's voice lowered. Is it true he never asked for your ID? Never even looked at me properly. Pulled me out of the car the moment he saw my face through the windshield. Janelle looked to Marcus. And your active duty army? Colonel Marcus Carter, 22 years. I've served overseas. Led Joint Force operations. I've also been pulled over for looking suspicious 3 times in the last year. Janelle leaned back slightly. That part never makes the news. Danielle's eyes locked onto hers. Then let's change that. There was a beat of silence. Janelle straightened. I want to do a full piece, but not just about you, about the system, the precinct, Maddox's history. Marcus scoffed. You're gonna need a whole newsroom for that, Janelle smiled. I've got interns and a lot of pissed-off followers. Danielle nodded slowly. Do it, but I want to control the first wave. My words, my voice. I figured you would, Janelle replied, standing. I'll give you 24 hours. She left. Marcus closed the door gently, then turned back to his wife. You really think exposing Maddox will change anything? Danielle stood, stretching her sore muscles. No, but exposing the people who let him stay on the force after 3 other complaints might. Marcus exhaled. You're already building a case. I never stopped. That night, Danielle sat at her desk at home, her left arm still sore, but her right hand flying over her keyboard. Files, body cam footage, civilian complaints, all coming together. She hadn't told Marcus yet, but she'd started researching Officer Maddox 2 months ago after a client came in bruised and broken and too afraid to press charges. That client had mentioned a cop with a snake tattoo on his forearm. Danielle remembered that tattoo from last night, clear as day. What Maddox didn't know was that the woman he threw against a car was already collecting the threads of his misconduct. And now she had proof. She opened a folder labeled Officer Ryan Maddox and stared at the document inside. It was a scanned affidavit from a teenage boy, just 16, beaten during a bogus traffic stop. The statement had been quietly buried. The precinct's Internal Affairs Division had closed it without explanation. But Danielle had something they didn't. A recording. The boy had recorded the end of the encounter. The file was crackly, but you could hear Maddox's voice, clear as day. You're gonna learn your place, boy. She hit play again, then saved it to a backup drive. The next morning, the story broke wider. Janelle's teaser ran across every station in Atlanta. Exclusive interview with civil rights attorney Danielle Carter. The truth behind the badge. Danielle sat in front of the camera wearing a navy blazer, hair natural, posture unyielding. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She told the truth. And when the anchor asked, "What do you hope happens to Officer Maddox?" she answered plainly, "I want the law to treat him the way it treats the rest of us. No more, no less." By noon, the mayor's office issued a vague statement promising a full investigation. By 3 p.m., protesters had gathered outside the precinct. But what Danielle didn't know yet, what no one did, was that Maddox had friends in high places. People who didn't like what she was stirring up. People who were already moving behind the scenes. And one of them had just placed a call. Do something about her, before she gets to the others. Danielle stood outside the courthouse, shoulders squared as the wind tugged at the lapels of her coat. She clutched the flash drive in her hand like it was a weapon, because in a way it was. The evidence she had compiled on Officer Maddox was damning. She wasn't just telling her story anymore, she was telling everyone's. But just before she could step inside, her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "They moved Maddox," he said without preamble. Danielle frowned. "What do you mean?" "He's off the street, reassigned to admin. They're trying to cool the flames before they spread." Danielle laughed bitterly. "So they're giving him a desk while they scramble to protect themselves. That's not accountability, it's optics." Marcus's voice dropped. "There's more. Internal Affairs is refusing to meet with your clients. 3 of them told me they've been contacted, warned, actually, not to speak to the press." Her jaw clenched. "They're threatening victims now?" "Looks like it." Danielle's fingers tightened around the flash drive. "Then it's time I stop playing polite." Inside, she met with Janelle Booker again, but this time in the private media room arranged by the courthouse. No cameras yet, just truth. Janelle leaned in. "You sure about this? What you're accusing goes beyond Maddox." "I'm not accusing," Danielle said flatly. "I'm exposing." She opened her laptop, inserted the drive, and brought up a chart that looked like a spiderweb of misconduct body cam lapses, missing reports, complaint suppressions, and a name that kept appearing in the margins. Deputy Chief Harold Eckhart. "He's the one running cover for them," Danielle said. "And he has for years." Janelle's eyes widened. "That man's untouchable. He was even praised at the governor's gala last year." "Exactly. The face of clean policing while covering the filth." Janelle's voice lowered. "You know he's going to come for you after this." Danielle looked her dead in the eyes. "Let him." That afternoon, as she left the courthouse, Danielle noticed 2 plainclothes officers parked across the street, watching. She didn't flinch, but Marcus did when she told him. "You're being followed," he asked sharply. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Because I knew exactly what it meant. We're getting close." "That's not the point, Danny. You're not bulletproof." "No, but I am loud." Marcus stepped forward, his voice trembling just beneath the surface. "You are my wife. I will not let them turn you into another headline." Danielle touched his cheek gently. "Then stand with me. Not just as a husband, as a soldier, as a black man who's worn that uniform and still gets treated like a threat." He held her gaze. "Always." The next day, Danielle's phone rang at 6:17 a.m. The voice on the other end was familiar, but cold. "Miss Carter, this is Deputy Chief Eckhart. I'd like to request a meeting." Danielle sat upright in bed. "A meeting? Why now?" "You've made quite a stir. Let's discuss how we can bring resolution without further escalation." "Resolution for who?" "For everyone. I'm sure we can find common ground." Danielle paused. "You mean silence? You want me to walk away?" "I want you to think carefully about what you're risking. Reputations, careers, your own safety." There it was, the threat wrapped in civility. Danielle replied, calm and precise. "You should think carefully, too, because if you come for me, you better make sure I don't get back up." And she hung up. That evening, Danielle appeared on live television for the first time. It was a national broadcast. Her story now had America's attention. She didn't waste time with fluff. I didn't come forward because I wanted to. I came forward because I had no choice. Because silence is complicity. She paused, scanning the crowd beyond the camera. Officer Maddox didn't act alone. He is a symptom of a system that protects power and punishes truth. And I will not rest until that system changes. As the broadcast cut, the media room buzzed with reactions. Tweets surged. Donations poured into the legal aid fund she had launched. But behind all the noise, in a smoky office downtown, Deputy Chief Eckhart sat watching the screen, jaw tight. "Pull her phone logs," he said to someone in the room. "Find out who she's talking to. We need leverage." A young officer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, she's a lawyer. That's protected." Eckhart turned slowly, eyes dark. "Then find something else. I don't care if it's her parking tickets or what she had for breakfast. Find something." Back at home, Marcus paced as Danielle read through yet another batch of messages from women and men with similar stories. "They're scared," she said, "but they're finally talking." Marcus sat beside her. "Then we have to protect them." She nodded. "We will. Together." Just as she reached to close her laptop, an email popped up with no subject line. The body of the message was short. "You're digging in the wrong dirt, Miss Carter. Keep going, and you'll find something that buries you." Danielle stared at the screen. Then she smiled, cold and clear. "Good," she whispered. "Let them be scared, too." It was a calm Thursday morning when Danielle Carter arrived at the small coffee shop on the edge of Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. The calmness was deceiving. Every step she took lately seemed to echo across the city. Today was no different. Across from her sat Julian Park, a quiet analyst from the district attorney's office. He looked like he hadn't slept. "You didn't hear it from me," Julian said as he passed over a manila folder, "but this came through the tip line yesterday. It didn't get logged." Danielle opened it slowly. Inside was a photo officer Maddox, 2 years ago, standing with 3 other cops. One of them was planting what looked like a bag of pills under the seat of a car. "You're kidding," she whispered. This is damning." "There's more," Julian said. "The guy they arrested that night, charges were dropped quietly. He disappeared. No follow-up, no paperwork. It's like he never existed." Danielle Riel's fingers tightened around the photo. "So this goes back years, and they've been covering their tracks the whole time." Julian nodded grimly. "If you go forward with this, they'll come after you hard. These aren't just dirty cops, they're networked." Danielle stood. "Then they'd better be ready, because I'm not coming quietly." That same afternoon, Danielle and Marcus held a press conference in front of the courthouse. She stood at the podium, and for the first time, Marcus stood behind her in full military uniform. The press snapped like wolves. "I'd like you to meet my husband," Danielle said calmly into the mic. "Colonel Marcus Carter, United States Army." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Some of you may recognize him from recent defense briefings or military tribunals. He's worn this uniform for 20 years, and yet, when a police officer shoved me, beat me, and threw me to the ground, that uniform, that service, meant nothing." Cameras clicked louder. Reporters began shouting questions. "Colonel Carter, were you aware of the threats against your wife?" "Yes," Marcus said, stepping forward. "And I've seen threats on foreign soil. I've seen tyrants and extremists. But I never thought I'd have to stand here and say that one of the greatest threats to our nation's unity walks our own streets in uniform." The moment went viral in minutes. Headlines screamed across the country. "Colonel defends wife assaulted by police." "Veteran's wife targeted by dirty cop." The Carters take on systemic racism. That evening, Danielle received a call from someone unexpected. Officer Reggie Kemp. "Danielle," he said hesitantly, I saw the broadcast. I used to work with Maddox. I kept quiet too long." She straightened in her seat. "Are you saying you're ready to talk?" Reggie hesitated. "I kept my head down because I thought I didn't have a choice. But after today, hell, maybe it's time." She met him in a parking garage an hour later. His eyes darted around nervously. "I got a recording," Reggie whispered, "a conversation between Maddox and Deputy Chief Eckhart. They talk about handling you, like shutting you up permanently." Danielle felt her heart rate spike. "Why didn't you turn this in?" "Because I'd be the next body in the river. But you're already on fire. Might as well throw more gasoline." He handed her a flash drive. "Careful, though, if they know you have this." "They won't," she said firmly. "Not until it's too late." At home, she played the recording with Marcus by her side. The audio was scratchy but clear. Maddox. "She's digging too close. She's got the files, the photos. If she goes public, we're done." Eckhart. "Then shut her down, whatever it takes. I don't want to hear her name again." Marcus's fist clenched. "We take this to the Attorney General," he said. Danielle shook her head. "No, not yet. They'll bury it. We go public first. Let the people hear it. Let the country judge them." That night, Danielle uploaded the audio to a secure server and shared it with multiple trusted journalists. She knew she was risking everything, but she was past the point of caution. The next morning, someone torched her car. It happened at 4:12 a.m. The neighbors said they saw a man in a black hoodie running away. The flames swallowed the vehicle in seconds. When the fire department arrived, all that remained was a melted shell. Danielle and Marcus stood on the curb, silent. "This is how they respond," Marcus said. "Intimidation. Terror." Danielle stared into the smoke. "It means we're close." Later that day, she received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. "Back off, or next time it's your house." Danielle didn't flinch. She looked Marcus in the eye and said, "Book us a room, somewhere secure. But we're not stopping. This story breaks tomorrow." And it did, at exactly 9 a.m. The major outlets across the country released the recording. They played Maddox's voice. They played Eckhart's orders. By noon, the Justice Department was under fire. By nightfall, Eckhart had been placed on administrative leave. Maddox, however, was nowhere to be found. An APB was issued. The media swarmed the police department. Protesters gathered outside City Hall. But Danielle knew it wasn't over. The empire had been shaken, but its king had disappeared. And now the hunt began. Rain tapped rhythmically against the window of the safe house. It was late evening, and the world outside felt heavier than it had days ago. Inside, Danielle Carter sat cross-legged on a worn leather armchair, her eyes scanning the endless stream of news alerts and social media reactions on her laptop screen. The leaked audio had caused a storm national outrage, urgent press briefings, calls for investigations. But Officer Maddox was still in the wind. Marcus stood by the window, arms crossed, silent. His uniform jacket hung over a chair, damp from the drive. A Glock rested near his belt, loaded. He never took chances now. "We made our move," Danielle said quietly. "Now they're hiding, watching, waiting." "They'll strike again," Marcus replied. "We embarrassed them. Now they'll want to finish it." A knock at the door made them both freeze. 3 short raps, 1 long. The code they agreed upon. Danielle checked the peephole and opened it carefully. It was Reggie Kemp, but his face was pale, eyes bloodshot. Something was wrong. "They killed Julian," Reggie said, breathless. "Found him in his apartment. Overdose." But it wasn't no overdose. Danielle's chest tightened. Julian didn't even take aspirin. They're cleaning house, Marcus growled. Anyone who helped us, anyone who knew. Reggie's voice trembled. And they're coming for me too. I'm done hiding, Danielle. I want to go on record. I'll tell them everything. Danielle reached for her phone. We'll call Aaliyah Grant. She's a federal reporter with the Tribune. She'll protect you. No, Marcus said suddenly. We can't trust anyone right now. This has to be live. Immediate. They decided to broadcast Reggie's testimony themselves, raw, unedited, streamed directly from the safe house to the public. The next morning, they set up a makeshift studio. Ring light, camera, mic. Reggie sat in front of the lens, sweating bullets. Danielle stood behind the camera. You sure you want to do this? Reggie looked directly into the lens. My name is Reginald Kemp. I've served in the Metropolitan Police Department for 11 years, and I've witnessed corruption, racial profiling, false arrests, and violent cover-ups, including those orchestrated by Officer Maddox and approved by Deputy Chief Eckhart. The video lasted 17 minutes. Reggie didn't hold back. He named names, told stories, spoke about planted evidence, about arrests made to meet quotas, about how Maddox assaulted citizens under the guise of stop and frisk, and threatened fellow officers who spoke up. They uploaded the footage and sent the link to every major outlet. Within the hour, the clip had gone viral. That afternoon, Reggie disappeared. His phone was off. His apartment was cleared out. No signs of struggle, just an open window and a single bullet casing on the floor. Danielle stared at the screen, frozen. They're not just hiding anymore. They're hunting. Marcus called an old contact from the Pentagon. We need protection, and we need it now. That evening, a convoy of unmarked SUVs pulled up to the safe house. A man in civilian clothes stepped out, Major Lucas Shaw, Military Intelligence Division. I was told you're the reason half of D.C. is shaking, he said with a smirk. This is bigger than one city, Danielle said. It's about an entire system. Lucas nodded. Then let's burn the whole system down legally. They set up a full-scale intelligence operation. Shaw's team began digging into Maddox's past, financials, and digital trail. Danielle led interviews with survivors Maddox had silenced for years. One woman, Angela Davis, revealed that Maddox had assaulted her teenage son during a traffic stop and fabricated charges to cover it up. Another, an elderly man named Clarence Bell, showed scars from a night Maddox had pulled him from his porch and accused him of trespassing on his own property. Each voice added fuel to the fire. But the biggest twist came late one night when Shaw burst into the safe house, eyes wide. We found him, he said. Danielle looked up. Where? Virginia backwoods. He's holed up with two other former officers off-grid. But here's the kicker, he's using burner phones. We traced a call from one of them to someone inside the DA's office. Silence fell. They're protecting him, Danielle whispered. The justice system itself. Marcus stood. Then we bring it all down, not just Maddox, the ones who let him rot this city from the inside out. Danielle nodded. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with purpose. No more warnings, no more waiting. We go in and we end this. As the safe house hummed with movement gear being packed, files being secured, Danielle pulled out a small pendant from her jacket pocket. It was her mother's, a quiet reminder of where she came from. She looked in the mirror and said to herself, almost as a vow, "They thought I was just a woman with no power. They're about to find out what happens when you threaten one with nothing left to lose." Outside, the storm clouds gathered again, this time not just of rain, but of reckoning. Danielle Carter never liked feeling helpless, but this was different. This wasn't just about her anymore. Every time she looked into the eyes of the victims who had come forward, people like Angela Davis, Clarence Bell, and dozens of others with their stories silenced and bruises hidden, she saw reflections of herself, of what could have been, or what still might be. The safe house buzzed with tension. Military maps, red flag dossiers, confidential memos. They all pointed to one conclusion. Officer Maddox was just the front man. The disease ran deeper, through the police force, into the DA's office, and even into federal protection circles. The deeper they dug, the dirtier it got. Danielle stood over a table littered with printed records and surveillance photos. Her fingers traced a line between one photo of Maddox walking into a suburban townhouse and another of Deputy Chief Eckhart shaking hands with a man wearing a Department of Justice pin. That was the night Maddox was supposedly suspended. But the truth was clear now. He was being sheltered. Marcus came up behind her. "You see the same thing I see?" She nodded. "He's not just running. He's being moved." Marcus leaned in, voice low. "We intercept the next move, cut it off at the source." Danielle's eyes locked with his. "And then what?" "We don't stop. We go all the way." The plan came together fast. Shaw had intel that Maddox would be relocated again that night, another ghost transfer. The SUV transporting him would take back roads through the Shenandoah forest before rendezvousing with a black chopper. This time they'd catch it all on camera. Danielle insisted on being there. Shaw pushed back hard. "You're too exposed. If anything happens—" "I've already been exposed," she snapped. "I'm not watching from behind a screen while the man who tried to destroy my life escapes again." They outfitted her with a vest and mic. Marcus would ride shotgun, armed and in full uniform. Shaw's team positioned unmarked vehicles along the likely route, drones overhead, snipers if needed. Just after 1 a.m., headlights broke the darkness. The convoy moved slow. 2 black SUVs, tinted windows, government plates. Danielle's van followed close. Marcus's jaw tightened with every turn. They reached a choke point in the road, a narrow pass near an abandoned ranger station. Shaw's voice came through the earpiece. "Now, go, go, go!" Marcus slammed the brakes, blocking the convoy. Armed agents rushed from the trees, weapons raised. But it didn't go as planned. The SUV in the front didn't stop. It gunned forward, tires screeching, slamming into one of the parked cars and narrowly missing an agent. Shots rang out. Danielle hit the floorboard as the window next to her shattered. Marcus shouted, "Danielle, stay down!" She looked up just in time to see the back door of the second SUV open. Officer Maddox stepped out slowly, hands up, smirking. But he wasn't alone. From the other side of the vehicle emerged Deputy Chief Eckhart. Danielle froze. Eckhart raised his badge. "Federal Protective Service, this operation is illegal. You are interfering in a federal transfer." Shaw's voice crackled over the comms. "That's a lie. We have no record of federal authorization." Eckhart's smirk deepened. "Because this is above your clearance, Major." Danielle stepped forward, her voice steady. "You assaulted me in public, Maddox. You called me a liar, tried to humiliate me, and then went underground like a coward. Now you think hiding behind federal paperwork will erase that?" Maddox tilted his head. "I think it already has." Danielle glanced at Marcus, who gave a subtle nod. Then she pulled out her phone and pressed play. The audio of Reggie Kemp's testimony blared through the speaker. Loud, clear, unmistakable. Reggie's voice shook with truth. "They covered for Maddox, paid me off to falsify reports. I saw Eckhart sign off on the cleanup logs. They threatened my family if I spoke up, but I'm done being afraid." The agents flinched. Several lowered their weapons. Cameras in Shaw's team went live, broadcasting everything. Danielle turned the phone toward Maddox. "This is already out there. There's no paperwork high enough to bury this." Eckhart's face paled. Suddenly, one of the agents from Maddox's escort team took a step back, then another. They knew the jig was up. But Maddox wasn't done. He lunged, In a flash, Marcus was between them, pinning Maddox to the asphalt with trained precision. Maddox snarled. "You don't get it. This won't stop anything. You think the public cares. They'll forget in a week." Danielle crouched beside him, her voice like fire. "Maybe. But you'll remember every single day from behind bars, and maybe that's enough for now." Sirens echoed in the distance, reinforcements arriving, this time real ones. Eckhart stood frozen. His phone buzzed, but he didn't answer. He knew it was over. Later, as Maddox was finally cuffed and loaded into a patrol car, this time by someone not on his payroll, Danielle exhaled for the first time in days. She turned to Marcus. "We're not done," he nodded. "Not even close." Danielle stared into the night sky, the first traces of dawn just beginning to break. For the first time since that awful day outside the cafe, she felt something return. Not peace, not justice, but power. Her power. And she was going to use it. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that presses on your chest like a weight. The kind that makes people hold their breath, even though nothing has been said yet. Danielle Carter sat at the plaintiff's table, her posture straight, hands folded tightly in front of her. Across the room, Officer Maddox and Deputy Chief Eckhart occupied the defense bench, flanked by their attorneys. Maddox looked haggard for the first time, eyes sunken, jaw clenched, the once smug confidence evaporated under the fluorescent lights. Judge Renee Travers glanced down from her bench, scanning the files. The media sat lined along the back, notebooks open, cameras rolling outside, and every eye in the room tracking one woman. Danielle. The case was explosive. A high-ranking black woman assaulted in public by a white police officer. A department cover-up. Federal interference. And now live testimonies, leaked recordings, and the possibility of systemic exposure. But no one expected what Danielle was about to do. Her lawyer leaned over. "You ready for this?" Danielle didn't blink. "I've been ready since the day they threw me on the ground and told me to know my place." The bailiff called her name and she stepped up to the witness stand. There was no tremble in her voice, no hesitation. "I am Major Danielle Carter, United States Army. I hold a top-secret security clearance and have served in over 9 overseas deployments, including active combat. But none of that mattered on the day I was assaulted by someone who saw my skin before he saw my badge." The jury shifted. Reporters scribbled furiously. "I was wearing plain clothes. I was walking to meet my husband. I had done nothing, absolutely nothing wrong. But Officer Maddox chose to harass me, physically assault me, and humiliate me in front of a crowd. Why? Because in his eyes, I didn't belong. Because he thought he could get away with it." Her voice cracked but didn't falter. "When I told him who I was, he laughed, and when I told him my husband was on his way, he mocked me. Until my husband arrived in uniform, and Maddox realized too late that the man he had disrespected was a decorated officer, and the woman he put his hands on had more integrity in her pinky than he'd ever have in his whole career." Gasps echoed from the back. Danielle paused, glancing at Maddox. He didn't look up. "But this isn't just about me," she continued. "This is about every single person who was told to shut up, to back down, to just accept it. I am here for them, too." Then came the twist. Danielle's team introduced the sealed deposition from an anonymous whistleblower, a woman named Vanessa Holt, an internal affairs officer who had gone missing 2 years ago after filing a complaint against Eckhart. Her voice played over the courtroom speakers. "I was told to destroy documents that implicated Eckhart and Maddox. When I refused, my transfer was cancelled, my badge revoked. I had to disappear, but I never forgot. Everything you're seeing now? I filed it years ago." Eckhart's attorney jumped up, objecting, shouting that it was inadmissible. The judge allowed it because Holt's identity had just been verified and confirmed safe by federal marshals that very morning. The courtroom cracked open like a fault line. Maddox looked like he had been hit with a truck. Eckhart turned to his legal team in disbelief. Danielle's lawyer drove the point home. This isn't just a rogue cop. This was institutional. This was protected, encouraged, and hidden by people in power. Until now. Outside, the crowd swelled. Protesters had gathered for days, holding signs that read, "Justice for Danielle. We are done being silent, and no more cover-ups." But it wasn't until now that things truly shifted. Danielle exited the courthouse, flanked by her husband, Marcus, Shaw, and members of her legal team. Reporters swarmed. A CNN anchor pushed through. "Major Carter, what do you hope comes out of this trial?" She looked directly into the lens. "I don't want pity. I want accountability. I want change, not just for me, but for the generations who come after. We cannot keep sweeping this under the rug. Not anymore." And then, for the first time, she smiled. Not because she'd won, because she knew they couldn't silence her ever again. And somewhere, watching from an office window several floors above, a U.S. senator set down her coffee and called her chief of staff. "Get me Danielle Carter on the phone. We may have just found our next candidate." The war wasn't over, but Danielle had just won a major battle, and she wasn't stopping there. The sun had just begun to set over Washington, casting a golden hue across the city's skyline, when Danielle Carter stood in front of the Department of Justice. Her uniform was crisp, medals lined neatly across her chest, but her eyes were fixed on something far beyond the steps, beyond the cameras and reporters crowding the plaza. Behind her, a wave of people filled the square. Veterans, mothers, college students, activists, people who had watched her story unfold like a mirror to their own pain and fury. For days, her face had dominated national headlines, but it wasn't the assault anymore. It was the reckoning. In the weeks since her testimony, Officer Maddox had been placed under federal investigation. Deputy Chief Eckhart was suspended, pending charges related to obstruction of justice and conspiracy to suppress misconduct. And thanks to the whistleblower, Vanessa Holt now safely protected, dozens of buried complaints were being unearthed, reopened, and broadcast for the world to see. Yet, none of that was what brought Danielle here tonight. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked gently, standing beside her in full uniform. She gave a faint smile. "I've never been more ready." As Danielle approached the podium, microphones surged forward and lights flashed like wildfire. But the roar of the crowd softened as she spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, but unflinchingly powerful. "A few weeks ago, I was thrown to the ground like a criminal for simply walking down a street in my own neighborhood. A man in uniform decided I didn't look like I belonged, and then he decided that his power gave him the right to hurt me." She paused, glancing at the crowd. "But today is not about what he did. Today is about what we choose to do with it." People leaned in, hungry for the next words. We can't keep waiting for the next video, the next trial, the next tragedy. Justice cannot be a headline. It must be a habit. And that begins when we refuse to accept the lie that says, "This is just how things are." The crowd murmured, moved. I was told to be quiet, to let it go, that fighting would only make it worse. But silence never protected anyone. It only protected those in power. And I chose not to be silent. Danielle took a breath. "Some say I'm brave, but the truth is, I was scared. I was scared they'd ruin my name, scare my family, twist my story. But I had a choice to live in fear or to fight for something better." And then came the twist. I've been offered many things in the past few days, book deals, TV interviews, even a run for office. The crowd stirred, a few gasps from the front. "I'm not here for fame," she continued. "I'm here to announce something else." Danielle reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded document. Her hand trembled slightly as she opened it. "This is a petition to form a nationwide task force made up of veterans, civil rights attorneys, and former law enforcement to create binding federal standards for police accountability. This isn't just about punishment. It's about prevention, transparency, and protecting every citizen, regardless of the color of their skin." The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, a chant rising from the back, spreading like wildfire. "Danielle! Danielle!" Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness but from something deeper. Resolve, relief, hope. She stepped down and Marcus caught her hand. They didn't need to speak. The look they shared said everything. This moment was bigger than either of them. Later that night, back at home, Danielle sat at the kitchen table with her daughter, Ava. The chaos of cameras was gone. It was quiet now. Real. Ava looked up, curious. "Mom, are you really gonna change the world?" Danielle chuckled softly, brushing a lock of hair from Ava's face. "I'm gonna try, baby. For you." The girl smiled wide, then leaned in and whispered, "You already did." Outside, porch lights flicked on across the neighborhood. Peaceful, safe, but not because nothing had happened, because someone had stood up. And the world listened. This story is a reminder. Injustice doesn't end in silence. It ends when someone dares to speak, to rise, to fight back. Danielle Carter wasn't just a victim. She was a mirror for a broken system. And she refused to be shattered by it. If this story moved you, if you believe in standing for what's right, then share her voice. Share this message. Subscribe to the channel. Because the more we listen, the more we rise. And justice starts with you.